Alright, you super sleuth. In this detective challenge, there are 3 levels. Each next riddle is trickier than the previous one. Aha! To get to the end and find out your results, you'll need to concentrate hard and use all your detective skills. Level 1. Anthony lives in the south of town, 20 minutes away from college. Mark's house is in the north and a bit closer, just 10 minutes away. Their lectures start at the same time, and the guys always meet in the park on the way to their classes. Who's usually further from the college building when it happens? The boys meet at the same point. It means they're the same distance away from the college building. Milan airport customs officers noticed that one man traveled abroad at least several times a week. They started to suspect he was a smuggler, but couldn't understand what he smuggled. He always had a suitcase or a bag with him, but there never was anything forbidden or expensive inside. Only several months later, when a new customs officer joined the team, the mystery was solved. What was it the man smuggled? He smuggled designer suitcases and bags. Detective Dan Carlos was following a criminal who had stolen his watch. This person, Dan didn't see whether it was a man or a woman, ran for a hospital building and disappeared inside. When the detective rushed through the doors, he saw 2 doctors examining their patients. One of them had to be the criminal he was looking for. But which one? It's the woman on the left. Her stethoscope earpieces aren't in her ears. Emily had passed a difficult test with flying colors. But for some inexplicable reason, her professor's sure the girl cheated. After arguing for a while, they come to an agreement. If Emily solves one riddle her teacher will give her, she'll get to keep her high mark. On the piece of paper the professor hands her, there's just one word: house. The girl doesn't need much time to figure out the answer. What is it? In this case, the color matters. The answer is greenhouse. Little Adam knew his older brother Philip got some money for his birthday. But however hard Adam tried, he couldn't find it. One day, when Philip was away, the boy sneaked into his brother's room. There was no money, but Adam found a map. The older boy had hidden the cash in the garden. Adam followed the instructions to a T. 10 steps to the left, 15 to the right, then 8 straight ahead. It must be here. The boy started to dig. He wasted 2 hours and still found nothing. Did Philip trick his little brother? Adam's steps were much smaller than his brother's. That's why he was digging in the wrong place. Level 2. It was the middle of a working day, and Helen was in her office. Suddenly, her home security system informed her there was someone inside. The woman called the police. She was sure the intruder had been sent by her competitors. She thought he was after the memory card with the information about her new project. When the police arrived, there was indeed a man in the house. They searched him but found no memory card. He couldn't have swallowed it. Then, where was the card? When the police got him, the man secretly slipped the memory card into one officer's pocket. After being searched, the criminal retrieved the card. The manager of a ski resort has gone missing. The police suspect 3 people that are staying at the hotel. Unfortunately, no one can find any of these people. They're probably on the slopes skiing. The police officers have no time to waste and decide to examine their rooms. Look at the suspect's stuff and say who is behind the disappearance of the manager. It's Joe. He's the only one who doesn't have warm clothes or winter sports gear and equipment. It means he didn't come to the resort to have some fun. Jason, a rich traveler, stayed in a small but expensive hotel at the seaside. During a severe storm with gale-force winds, there was a blackout. The whole area was plunged into darkness. People stayed without electricity for at least 2 hours. The problem was finally solved, but Jason discovered that during the commotion, someone had taken his wallet with tons of cash and all his credit cards. The police arrived and questioned the people who had been in the hotel at that time. Justin, the receptionist, told the detective he had been in the basement. He had been trying to start an emergency generator. Unfortunately, he didn't succeed. Nicole, another guest, said she arrived an hour before the blackout. She was exhausted. She lit several candles, unpacked, cleaned herself, and went to bed. Gregory, the hotel driver, said he had been at the airport. A new guest had arrived, and he went to pick him up. The police immediately figured out who was lying. Can you? The blackout was caused by a bad storm, and planes don't fly in such windy weather. Then how could someone arrive by airplane? Gregory lied. In the 22nd century, robots live among people, and it's nothing out of the ordinary. But sometimes they resemble people so much it makes detective work way harder. Like this time. Eric Blank, an experienced police officer, has to figure out which of the 3 suspects is guilty of identity theft. He knows for sure the culprit is a robot. But who isn't human? It's the girl in the middle. She has a USB port on the side of her neck. Level 3. Maria had to take part in a very important sports competition. But several days before the event, her boyfriend, Keith, found out the girl had disappeared. The only thing she left behind was a note. "I'm sorry, I had to leave. We'll never see each other again. Please call my sister Jenny. Her phone number is 2121-736362. Confused by the message, Keith went to the police. "I think Maria was taken away against her will and made to write this note. She is an only child in the family and doesn't have a sister." The police started an investigation. They found 3 people who could be behind the disappearance. Cheryl, Maria's competitor, said she had been at her mom's house resting before the competition. Aaron, Cheryl's coach, told the police he'd been spending all his time at the gym. And Kyle, Maria's coach, said he had felt unwell and stayed in bed. Who knows something about Maria's whereabouts? In her note, the girl didn't write a phone number. This way, she encoded the criminal's name, Aaron. Boy, who needs a coach like that? Janet had a dream. She wanted to become her professor's assistant. The man was a famous and talented scientist. The man knew she was a smart girl. But before offering her the position, he decided to put her to the test. The professor took her to a house with 2 rooms, completely isolated from each other. In one room, there were 3 switches. In the other room, there were 3 light bulbs. Janet had to stay in the room with the switches. She was allowed to go to the other room only once. She had to understand which switch was connected to each of the bulbs. The girl managed to solve this task. How did she do it? She turned on the first switch and waited for a minute. Then she turned it off. After that, she flipped the second switch and went inside the room with the bulbs. One of the bulbs was on. It was the one connected to the second switch. Janet touched the remaining bulbs. The warm one was connected to the first switch, and the cold one was linked to the third switch. Kyle lived on the 6th floor of an apartment building. Once, the man was having his coffee on the balcony. Suddenly, he spotted a woman on the 8th floor of the building opposite his. She opened the window and threw something with a great force. In no more than a minute, Kyle jumped to his feet and ran to call the ambulance. They arrived soon and rushed the woman to a hospital. What did she throw out of the window? It was a boomerang. Hey, I didn't say all these people were smart. Do you feel like cracking another rebus puzzle, this time a more difficult one? Take a look at this. What does it mean? Safety in numbers. If you've managed to get through the first level, you have better logical skills than many other people. Watching more detective movies can make your observation skills sharper. If you've left behind 2 levels, congrats! You must have strong analytical thinking skills. Just pay a bit more attention to details. If you've passed all 3 levels, wow, way to go! Very few people can get to this point. You must be the one people ask for advice in tricky situations, because you can find a solution to any problem. I can dig caves, but I don't need a shovel to do it. I store silver and gold in these caves. I can build bridges, and I can make golden crowns. Everyone needs me at least once in a lifetime, but most people are scared of me. Who am I? I'm a dentist. The mystery of growth. When Mike was 15 years old, he hammered a nail into a cherry tree in his grandmother's garden. He wanted to mark his height. 10 years later, he returned to see if the nail was any higher. If the tree grew 1 inch taller each year, how much higher would the nail be? The nail's position wouldn't change. Trees grow at their top. An orange riddle. Jenny was locked inside a room with 15 other people. Each of them could see the entire room and everyone inside. To do it, they didn't need to turn their heads or bodies or move in any way. To get out of the room, Jenny had to place an orange in such a way that everyone but one person could see it. The girl managed to do it, but how? She put the orange on one person's head. Which one is more expensive? Eric went to the supermarket and took 2 oranges and 1 watermelon. They cost him $6. Helen went to the same supermarket. She opted for a lemon, an orange, and a watermelon. The girl paid $8. Oranges, lemons, and watermelons have different prices per piece. What's more expensive, an orange or a lemon? Eric had 2 oranges and a watermelon, which cost him $6. These 2 kinds of fruit have different prices, so it can't be 2 plus 2 plus 2. The only other combination is 1 plus 1 plus 4. Then, a watermelon costs $4. Helen paid $4 for the watermelon and $1 for the orange. It means the lemon cost her $3, which makes it more expensive than the orange. The worried wife. Jason got into a car accident and lost his memory. When he came around in his hospital room, he saw 3 young women near his bed, but the man couldn't remember who they were. Each of them claimed to be his wife. The doctor told him Jason had to stay in the hospital for at least 1 more week. "Sweetheart, what am I supposed to do if you never remember me?" The woman on the left was sobbing bitterly. "Honey, I'm so worried. Let's go home. I don't like it here. I'll take better care of you at home," the one in the middle exclaimed. The girl on the right was furious. "They're trying to steal you from me. Let's leave this place right away." Which lady is the man's wife? She's the one on the left. She's the only one who's worried. The other two want to take Jason away from the hospital, but he's injured and needs medical care. The inheritance. Jim's uncle Archibald was a wealthy man who loved playing pranks on his relatives. That's why, when he passed away, no one could find his will. But one day, a few years later, Jim was looking through some old papers. Suddenly, his breath caught in his throat. The document he was holding was his uncle's will. It read, "I hid all my money and other valuables at 3 p.m. sharp under my favorite cherry tree, right where its shadow ends. The one who digs it out will be my heir." Jim was beyond happy. He was going to be wealthy. He drove to his uncle's posh villa and found the cherry tree. He waited till 3 p.m. and started to dig. But try as he might, his efforts didn't pay off. Confused and upset, he had to return home. Why didn't he find anything? It's been several years since Jim's uncle hid his valuables. The tree has grown taller, and its shadow has become longer too. Who's poor? These two girls are putting on their makeup and getting ready to go out and have fun. They're using pretty much the same things: lipsticks, cosmetics, clothes. Their phones look similar too. But one of these girls is poor. Who is it? Take a closer look at the girl on the left. Her phone gives her away. It's an obvious knockoff. But then again, she saved some money. She won't be poor for long. Who is it? Mark and Liza had been dating for 2 years. One day, the guy came to his girlfriend's house. He was going to propose to her. But when he made it there, he found Liza with another man. Mark was furious. The other guy got scared and rushed out of the house. Liza was shouting it was her brother, but Mark knew better. Unfortunately, he hadn't seen the guy's face clearly. When he ran outside, he saw 3 men. Which one is Liza's lover? It's the guy on the left. It's freezing outside, and the other 2 guys have red cheeks and noses. But the third guy's face is pale because he just left a warm house. A weird choice. Every day, Mark rides his bike to the railway station to get to the college. There are 2 stops near his home. One is a mile away from his house, and the other 2 miles away in the opposite direction. In the morning, he always gets on the train at the first stop, and in the afternoon, he gets off at the second. Why? Mark's home and the stations are on the hill, and this method allows the guy to ride his bike down without any effort. A money problem. A notorious criminal caught rich businessman Brian and locked him in a room. "I won't let you go until you double the money I leave for you." And the criminal put $5,000 on the table. By the time he returned, Brian had already doubled the money. He hadn't left the room or communicated with anyone. Then, how did he do it? He put the money in front of the mirror. A realization. 3 friends fell asleep under a tree in the countryside. While they were resting, a boy painted mustaches on their faces. Once the men woke up, they started to laugh. But then, all of a sudden, they stopped. Why? At first, they saw the mustaches on their friends' faces and found it funny. But then, they realized their friends were laughing too. It meant they had mustaches on their faces as well. Wealthier grandfather. Aaron and his grandfather were very close. They spent a lot of time together and loved cracking detective riddles. Unfortunately, the elderly man passed away unexpectedly. His lawyer informed the relatives that the grandfather had hidden all his money, and he was a wealthy man. The one to find it would get all the inheritance. Aaron realized the grandfather wanted him to get everything. He ran to the elderly man's office and soon understood where to look for the money. Can you figure it out? There's a cross drawn on the picture with a fountain. That's the fountain from their garden. Aaron has to look for the money there. Trapped in a well. James was a famous detective who could crack even the trickiest mysteries. Once, he was investigating a case and found some crucial evidence. The next morning, he woke up in a well. It was old and deep, but luckily not filled with water. On the flip side, there was no way the detective could get out to the surface. Suddenly, James saw his main suspect's face at the top of the well. "You won't live long enough to rat me out," the man shouted. And then, the detective felt soil falling on his head. The guy was going to bury him alive. But in an hour, James was already out of the well and running away. How did he manage to get out? The detective started to shake off and tamp down the soil that was falling into the well. He was getting closer and closer to the surface until he managed to jump out and run away. Stolen documents. Early in the morning, Ashton got a call from his friend, an owner of a big company. The man was in distress. A very important contract had disappeared from his office. It was on the desk the evening before, but nowhere to be found in the morning. Ashton immediately headed to his friend's office to question the employees. In no time, he had 3 suspects. Ben said he'd spent the previous evening at the movies. Mason took his girlfriend out to dinner, and Jesse was invited to a party. It didn't take Ashton long to understand who was lying. It was Ben. His ticket wasn't torn, so he didn't actually go to the movies. Real or fake? Paul decided to visit his elderly aunt he hadn't seen for several months. But when he got to her house, he saw 2 men wearing construction worker uniforms. They were moving out some furniture. "What are you doing here?" Paul asked. "Mrs. Sanders hired us to help her get rid of old furniture. We're from Pick and Carry Transport Company," one of the men answered. He sounded honest. But Paul was a smart guy. He felt there was something wrong about the whole situation. Suddenly, he realized the men were burglars. How did he understand it? There was no company van near his aunt's house, just a dark car with tinted windows. Plus, why were the men wearing construction worker uniforms if they were movers?